Commissioners, would you please stand for the moderator?
Let us pray. O God, you summon the day to dawn. You teach the morning to waken the earth. Great is your name, great is your love. For you the valleys shall sing for joy, the trees of the field shall clap their hands. Great is your name, great is your love. For you the monarchs of the earth shall bow, the poor and the persecuted shall shout for joy. Great is your name, great is your love. Your love and mercy shall last forever, fresh as the morning, sure as the sunrise. Great is your name, great is your love. We give you thanks, O God, our Creator and Redeemer and Sustainer. As we meet together this day as a court of your church, give to us clarity of thought and purpose, quietness of spirit and integrity of speech, that all we do may be done in according with your will. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, I declare this General Assembly duly constituted and competent to do any business which may come before it. You may be seated. Close me? Okay. So we start with a territorial acknowledgement. Those of us gathered here come from many places that are the traditional lands and territories of many different First Nations peoples. But today we acknowledge that the land we are gathered on here for our General Assembly is the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabeg and Haudenosaunee nations, that they have cared for it and lived in relationship with it and with the plants, animals, and waters around and within this land for thousands of years. We acknowledge with respect the importance and sacredness of this land to the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee nations, the significance this land holds within the cultural and spiritual practices, and the rootedness of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee families and communities within the land where we are gathered today. We, as Presbyterians, come from a tradition steeped in understanding of holy ground, but we know that we are still learning how to walk humbly on that ground. Part of our learning to walk humbly is learning the history of the land and the history of the peoples, first in relationship with it. Who first cared for this land and what that relationship means to the people who were the first caretakers and who continue in that role today. What the treaties have been made and how they are being lived out. The neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people cared for and protected this land and these waters for millennia, and they still care for and remain in that relationship with the land today. Some of that care and protection and living in relationship with the land was treaty-based. This land is part of the Dish with One Spoon treaty between the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabeg peoples, which is an agreement about how land and resources are to be shared and how people are to be in relationship with one another. We acknowledge the ongoing importance of that treaty, that treaty holds for the people on these lands. The land we are gathered on today is also part of the 1784 Haldimand Treaty, signed by the British and their allies, the Six Nations, after the American Revolution. That treaty was also to be an agreement about how to be in relationship, but we acknowledge that it has not been followed. The 6 nations of the Grand River now reside on less than 5% of the land covered by the original treaty. Lastly, and only first having acknowledged the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee nations, the deep significance and relationship that land held for them, and the treaties that cover this place, we acknowledge our own identity and relationship with the land and the First Nations peoples as the Presbyterian Church in Canada, a church that participated in colonization. We acknowledge the harm we have done as well as the commitments we have made to redress that harm. In doing so, we lift up the ongoing work needed for healing and reconciliation. Thank you for your attention to that. I want to start with just 2 sort of announcement kinds of things. The first is that I have asked one of the commissioners to be my chaplain. So she is Kathy Fraser. She's sitting right there. Let her stand up. She's going to be gathering prayers, and I'm aware that life goes on during general assemblies, and you may be aware of, close personal relationships at home or things that happen that are impacting you in a significant way. And if you would like a word of prayer for that, each day at each Sederunt, I'll close with prayer. And if there's something significant that is weighing on your heart, would you let Kathy know? She is collecting prayers for me, and she'll put that on the list. I'm aware of just things do happen, and we carry those with us as we come as commissioners. So Kathy will gather prayers. The other thing I want to start with, and this is very sad for me, your moderator is going to start by crying. We just received word that John Dirksen died over the weekend. Many of you will know him as the Knox College music professor. Many of us, for 9 years, I sang in his choirs and went on tours with the Knox College Choir. Apparently he came down with contracted a very aggressive form of brain cancer earlier this year, and it took him quite suddenly. And so we really just want to keep John, but also his family, Kristen, and others in our prayers. I know a lot of us who come from Knox College would want to know that, so I just thought we'd start with that. Okay, and now we are on to the business. I think it's commissioner orientation, which is Victor.
Thank you, moderator. So I'll try to keep my words brief. I just want to thank the moderator for her leadership thus far, and we look forward to her continued leadership throughout this General Assembly. Just want to thank all of you for being here, making time in your busy schedules to travel, for some of you great distances, to come to be part of the General Assembly to help together in this place discern what God is doing within our midst, to, as Paul said in the sermon, to listen intentionally with attention to how God is active, to what God is calling the church today to be, and into our future. So a couple of things. The General Assembly is the only body with the authority to make or change the doctrine and the laws and the policies of our church. Okay, so it's a really important task to which you have been commissioned. And again, please remember that as a commissioner of the General Assembly, you are here at a level of discernment in the highest court of the church. You are not here to vote according to your presbytery, according to your session, your congregation. You're here to vote as the Spirit guides us as members of this particular court. You're here as individuals, but as members of this part of the body of Christ. So please remember that. Just want to remind you that tomorrow, there is no evening program and there is no dinner provided. Okay, so if you weren't sure of that, you can't go to the cafeteria for dinner. We're inviting you to make your own plans for dinner. And I think on the website, under the General Assembly information page, there are some suggestions as to where to go. Lots of wonderful restaurants around here, but Tuesday dinner is on your own. So please be aware of that. The role of the moderator, and Pat has told me, when I veer into wanting to teach, because that's just her default, nudge me and say, stop teaching. The role of the moderator is really to conduct the assembly with good order, to ask the questions of the assembly, to take the vote, preserve order. When you come to the microphones, there are 4 microphones. Please come to the microphones. The clerks will try to pay attention to who's at what mic at what time. And then when you are recognized by the moderator, and Pat will not know all of your names, she will say microphone 1, microphone 2, 3, or 4. And then when you've been recognized at that microphone, please introduce yourself by saying, moderator, I am Victor Kim from the Presbytery of East Toronto. And then please proceed so that we have that information. Address the moderator, please, when you speak at the microphone. Don't address other commissioners. The moderator represents the whole assembly, so please address the moderator. So hopefully all of you have had a chance to download the reports that are on the General Assembly downloads page. They are in sequential order. Okay, so it's one big PDF and it's in sequential order, and that's the order in which we will conduct the business of the assembly. So for those of you who've been here for many assemblies, you'll remember the days when every report had an appointed time. And then we would skip from this report to this report to this report and back to that report later on. And one report could go over like 4 different Sederunts. We're not doing that any longer. We're just going over them sequentially. So you'll note that we begin with the business committee and then we're right on to the assembly council, and we'll just go through those reports sequentially. So hopefully you will have downloaded the big PDF and will have got that onto your devices, whatever you're using, and save the Wi-Fi for the business that the committee needs to do. So if you would do that, we'd really appreciate it. Again, when you're at the microphones and there is a recommendation on the floor, please try to limit your comments to, moderator, I speak in favor of the recommendation or the motion, or moderator, I'm speaking against the motion or the recommendation. Or if you have an amendment, please let us know that you have your amendment. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Contrary to I don't know what this would be called, but contrary to popular opinion, there is no award for the commissioner that comes to the microphone the most during the General Assembly. This award, this fictional award, has had various different names throughout the years, named after certain commissioners who shall go unnamed and who I do not believe are here at this assembly, but there is no such award and you cannot win. So please don't feel like you need to get up to the microphone 15 or 16 times for every report. You're only to speak to the motion once, unless you are the mover of the motion, in which case you have the right to reply before the main question is called. When it's time for the vote, the moderator will call for the question. Do you have your voting cards? Can we see them? Yeah. So that's how you vote, just like that. So when the moderator says all in favor, you put your cards up. All those opposed, you put your cards up. And then we can declare how the vote has gone. You should vote on every motion. You should vote on every motion. And it's a matter of just being attentive to the business before us. The young adult representatives, can we see your cards? Young adult representatives are seated at that table there. They're sitting together. They've got the blue cards. And the young adult representatives have advisory votes where they would like to have their views noted. The advisory votes at this point don't have, they're not counted as part of the overall votes, but the commissioners, you will be advised as to what these young people in our midst feel about any given recommendation. Again, a reminder that any consent recommendations which are presented at the beginning of a committee's report, if you want to take any of the consent recommendations off the consent agenda, get to a microphone. You don't need a seconder, and all you got to do is to say, moderator, I would move that recommendation 2 be removed from the consent agenda. There's no debate about it. We'll just take it off. And then once we've passed the remaining consent agenda, we'll get to recommendation 2 in the order of the reports that we will be attending to in that report. Then finally, making a motion or amendment. So you know that there's a link on the website to how you could make an amendment to a motion or create an additional motion to a report. We hope that you will use this link for all of your additional motions or any amendments or amendment to the amendments that you would like to make. Okay? When you get to the microphone and you've submitted an amendment to a recommendation, follow along, and when you're at the right point, get to the microphone, be acknowledged by the moderator, and then say again, moderator Victor Kim, East Toronto, I have submitted an amendment to this recommendation, and then we'll wait for the team to get that amendment onto the screen, because every motion will be projected on the screen. That amendment will then appear, and then we can discuss that amendment, okay? Or a new motion if you have a new motion. If you don't have anything submitted, but in the course of the debate you feel like I need to say something and I need to make an amendment, get up to the microphone, be recognized by the moderator, and then say, moderator, I have an amendment. I haven't had time to submit it, but I do have an amendment. The moderator will give you time then to get to your machine, get on that link, fill out that jot form, email it. It goes over there to Kara and Tim, and then they will work on it and get it over here to Nicole, who will then get it projected, and we will wait for you. We will wait for you. Don't feel rushed. Don't feel like, oh, I'm slowing everything down. We will wait for you, and once it gets up onto the screen, we can then debate that amendment, okay? So we don't want you to say, well, I'm just going to say it. Please write it. This way we have a record of it. We have an electronic record of all of the amendments made or amendments to the amendment or new motions, additional motions. If you're off topic, the moderator will rule you out of order. And I'm told that Pat has no fear of ruling anybody out of order. So if you're not on topic, she will rule you out of order. Now, if you feel like the moderator has ruled you out of order in error, or that the decision of the moderator is something that you would like to challenge, and I'm just saying you better be darn sure of wanting to challenge the moderator, you could say, I would like to challenge the ruling of the moderator, and then we will conduct a vote. And I don't think Don and I have talked about this. No ruling of the moderator has ever been overturned by the assembly. Don't challenge the moderator unless you really feel that you need to. A number of things just to finish. There are a couple of different types of votes or motions that can come up. Sometimes people say, moderator, I want to call for an immediate vote. Okay, so you can get up to the microphone, and when you're recognized, you might say, this has gone on long enough, I call for the immediate vote. Okay, that requires a seconder, and there is no debate about it, but we have to vote to see if the assembly agrees to have an immediate vote. And if the motion to have an immediate vote passes, then we will have an immediate vote on the recommendation which is before us, and no more debate on that. Okay, so that's the immediate vote. A motion to refer is always in order, and a motion to refer basically says that we think that this motion shouldn't be decided at this time, and so somebody gets up and says, moderator, I would move a motion to refer, that this motion be referred to the clerks of assembly, to the assembly council, to the committee on church doctrine, wherever. Again, you need a seconder for that. It's not debatable other than in 3 areas: where it should be referred, when the report back from the reference would be, and if it should be referred, but not the content of it, okay? So that's the motion to refer. And then finally, dissent. If you find that the assembly has made a significant decision that you truly feel in your conscience that you cannot stand together on. This isn't just a thing that you think, I wish it had gone a different way. This is a very serious issue of conscience. And you are at such odds that you need to publicly declare your dissent to the decision of the Assembly. Please come to the microphone after the vote has taken place. Again, give your name and your presbytery and say that I wish to record my dissent. And then we want you to go online, again, to that downloads page, to the forms page, find where it says dissent, and then fill out that form and email it to Terry Lee Hamilton. If you have a written dissent, you wish to give reasons for your dissent, there is a form in which you can write out the reasons for your dissent. It has to be less than 250 words, and it has to be received within 10 days of the time of your dissent. Your dissent must be given at the time in which the recommendation is dealt with. You can't wait till tomorrow and say, I think I'll dissent and send Terry Lee an email. It has to be recorded here and now, and then the reasons must be given within 10 days in writing, less than 250 words. Final thing that I'm going to invite you to listen to is that we have 5 additional chaplains appointed for this General Assembly. As I call your name, would you please stand? Joyce Januszowski. There's Joyce, she's back there in the blue dress. Okay. Jennifer Cameron. There she is, here in the front. Paul Wu. There's Paul in the middle there. Henry Hildebrandt. There's Henry in the middle there. And Ross Lockhart. And there's Ross in the bow tie. There are 5 chaplains for our assembly. They will be available throughout the assembly if a pastoral concern or a pastoral emergency or something really critical comes up and you wish to talk to someone. Please seek out one of the chaplains. They are commissioners to the assembly as well, so I know that they'll want to participate in all of the activities of the assembly as well. And I just need to remind you that you cannot fake a pastoral emergency just so you can hang out with Ross Lockhart. That is not allowed. But thank you to the chaplains for your agreement to serve as chaplains during this assembly. Those are my comments for orientation. If you have other questions, please come and see either myself or Don Muir, and we'll try to answer those questions as well as we can. And we'll leave it there. Thank you.
So we'll have a report from the business committee to start.
Thank you, moderator. Our first report is actually the report of the committee relieve and withdrawal. If you need to be away for one or more of the Sederunts, you're asked to fill in the form that's on the website and send that to Terry Lee Hamilton. You include your reasons for not being able to be at the Sederunt in that. We don't share all of those reasons with the General Assembly, but the business committee meets to decide whether we'll accept your reasons for not being here at the assembly. So send those to Terry Lee, and then the business committee will report on the requests for leave to withdraw. So we have received some requests. First of all, these are moved by Jonathan Tate, Presbytery of Barrie, and seconded by Colleen Walker, Presbytery of Temiskaming. Shall I go ahead with the recommendations? Recommendation 1 is on the screen. I can read it too if you like, but if you can see it, then I don't need to.
I need to call. I'll call for the question.
Recommendation 1 is there.
All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Recommendation 2 is moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Thank you, moderator. That's all from the business committee for now.
Great, thank you. So for the good of the order, if you know you're a committee that's going to be presenting in the next little while, you've got that order of the reports, if you would move to the table up front here, that'll save us a little bit of back and forthing. And so now I'd like to call on the Assembly Council. That's the report we will take next.
Good morning, GA. How's everybody? You ready for more fun and games? My name is Sherry Inksetter. I am a commissioner for West Toronto, and I'm the convener of the Assembly Council. You will have received your reports, and there's actually 3 parts to your report. There's the original report, there's the supplementary report, and then there's the financial statements. You should note that the financial statements audited were uploaded just late last week. We do apologize for how late they were, but we hope that you have had a chance to look over them. As we begin the Assembly Council report, I'm not going to read it all. You can all read. But we start with a moment of hope. In the last year and a half, almost 2 years, the Assembly Council has been talking about where we are and where we hope to be in the future of the PCC. And if you were at General Assembly last year, you were invited in table groups to talk about hope. And you were invited to talk about possibility and good stories. And we took that information back and we continued our discussion. And then we formed a working group to look at where we might be as a denomination. We took people from a broad spectrum across the country, and we put people from congregational ministry and other ministries, and we said, talk about where we are. What is our story? What could our story be? And does our structure support our ongoing story? And so that conversation is happening, and we will report back at our next assembly with some, I hope, some really exciting possibilities for where we might be. Because I think we all recognize that things are changing and we need to change with them. So we wanted to open our report with that hope and that possibility, and then go on to some other really great news. We had 2 special commissions, and one special commission coming out of 2 overtures that invited us to look at where we are and what we're doing interculturally. And so we have developed, with General Assembly's mandate, the position of interculturally. We don't, oh, okay, I don't have any. Pardon me. I do? Did I look at the old one?
I don't know.
Pardon me. Pardon me. Do I have the numbers? Yeah, they're right here. Sorry.
Maybe that's why. Let's compare, make sure.
Consent.
Yep.
Recommendations are these ones here.
Okay. Apologies. I was looking at probably an interim one here. We do have consent recommendations. If you look at your original report, we have ASC 003, ASC 004, 005, 008, and 009. They are identified by the little cursor, and that they be adopted by consent.
Microphone 2.
Well,
Microphone 2.
It's on now. It's on now.
moderator. My name is Gary Marnock from Lindsay, Peterborough. I'd like to ask that ASC 3 recommendation be taken from the consent agenda,
ASC
the
3.
third recommendation.
Okay. When you stand near the mic, when you go to the microphone, please stand quite close to the microphone so we can hear you. I see microphone number 4.
I'll try to be taller. Laura Payne, Presbyterian of Oak Ridges. I'd like to request that ASC 004 be withdrawn from the consent recommendation.
004, thank you. Okay. Okay, then the rest of the consent agenda. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Okay, now you.
Now I think I'm back on track. Thank you for,
Get to those in order.
thank you. So we will start with recommendation number 1. That is our intercultural liaison position. We took some significant time and advertised for this position. We were very gratified by the number of candidates that came forward. And we did interview 2 candidates at great length. We started with 6 and then we brought it down to 2. And eventually it was, there was no question that the successful candidate was the person that we thought would serve the Presbyterian Church in Canada well. And it is my joy and my honor to present to you the Reverend Dr. Pablo Kim Sun to be the intercultural liaison person. And that is the recommendation that he be appointed to the position of intercultural liaison for a 5-year term.
So that has been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. Do you want to talk for a minute about what this person will do?
I can. So I've been asked to just talk about what this job description will look like. This person will be coming into the Presbyterian Church in Canada with significant experience in this area to help us work to be more intercultural. And what that means is bringing all the different cultures within the PCC together to work together harmoniously, and also to extend that intercultural piece out towards our congregations. So they will be having conversations with congregations and with presbyteries. They will be open to having personal discussions on what's happening interculturally with folks across the denomination, and also trying to do some outreach work within our areas of ministry so that we can become more intercultural, more integrated within our society, and be more relevant to our communities. Does that pretty much sum it up?
I've asked the clerk to say a few more things.
Moderator, just if you recall, back a couple of years ago, the special committee report that came back that had responded to a couple of petitions from the Hunter presbyteries. And the work of that special committee over 2 years resulted ultimately in the creation of the Office of Intercultural Liaison, which was approved by the General Assembly as a 5-year position. This is something that we've never done before, and that the person in the Office of Intercultural Liaison would occupy a general secretary level position within the church. So that's at the highest level of appointment within the church, which is why it's coming to you, the General Assembly. And a lot of that is dealing with issues around interculturalism, but also the reality of the rise of global Christianity within our midst, global Christian migration, how global migration is impacting Christianity both here in our country and within the Presbyterian Church in Canada. And what does that mean for us going forward? How do we truly think about what it means to be an intercultural church? And it's not just multiculturalism, it's intercultural, and there's a lot there. And the work is going to be incredibly challenging, difficult, but hopefully rewarding. And there's many aspects of racism that will also be addressed in this position. It's a 5-year term position at this moment. And this position as the intercultural liaison will lead this work of the church for the next 5 years. It will eventually be supported by additional staff in the office of the intercultural liaison. But for today, the motion is to name this intercultural liaison.
So is there any question, comment? Take it you are ready for the vote then. Recommendation before you, and all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried.
And it would be my joy and delight to introduce you to our new intercultural liaison person, the Reverend Dr. Pablo Kimson.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm deeply honored and grateful for the trust and confidence that the General Council and the Assembly Council and the General Assembly have placed in me by approving appointment of intercultural liaison. This role is crucial in fostering a welcoming and inclusive environment within Presbyterian Church in Canada, reflecting our commitment to embracing diversity of all God's people. Drawing from my extensive background in theological studies and intercultural leadership, I'm dedicated to upholding the values and the vision of the church. My aim is to collaborate closely with congregations, courts, and committees to build on the important work that has already been done and ensure that we continue to grow as an inclusive church community. The work is inherently collective. We need the wisdom, experience, and participation of each member of our community to move forward together. While we face complex challenges as a church, it is essential to maintain hope and trust in our collective journey. As my colleague, Adrian Jacobs, who served as a senior leader for Indigenous Justice and Reconciliation for CRC, was once told by his mentor, and his mentor said, Adrian, when you're welcome to work in any new organization for at least 2 years, you need to be a historian and a lover. I will accept this advice and will enter into this new role as a historian, as a passionate lover. And I will add an anthropologist, because there are things that are not written on documents and or explicitly stated by people. So as we embrace change, we must remember that if nothing changes, nothing changes. Transformation is necessary for growth, even though it might come with discomfort for some. But together, we can create a church that celebrates the rich tapestry of culture within our community, embodying Christ's love and inclusivity. And importantly, at least for me, we are not pursuing diversity for its own sake or because we romanticize it. We are doing this because it gives glory to God, strengthens the church, and prepare us to navigate increasingly complex local issues and global challenges. By integrating insights and gifts of all our diverse groups, we become stronger, more resilient, and together we will thrive. Our strength lies in our unity, faith, and our tradition of reformation, where we continually seek to reflect Christ's teaching and more faithfully living out the gospel of peace. By embracing diversity and fostering inclusivity, we embody Christ's message. So I'm excited to embark this journey with you, confident that together we can achieve great things for God's glory and for the kingdom of God. Let us move forward with courage and hope, knowing that each step toward inclusivity brings us closer to God's vision of the church and for the shalom of the city and the nations. Thank you.
Stay here. I want to say a word of prayer. So I want to, Pablo, welcome, and we really look forward to your ministry among us. And let's just have a word of prayer. Gracious God, we pray for Pablo and his work among us. We pray that we would be good listeners and learners together, that we would explore territory that perhaps is new to some of us, and do so with a will that is your will and a spirit that is your spirit, so that we may go forward together into wherever your spirit will lead us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Pablo has let me know that he will be around GA until tomorrow afternoon, and he is looking forward to getting to meet many of you. So please go up and introduce yourselves. You're on to recommendation number 2, I believe. I'll wait for it to be up on the screens. The recommendation 2, you will see the reasons that were listed in the report. That for the reasons outlined above, the prayer of Overture 7, 8, and 9, 2024 be not granted. The information is in your reports and moved and seconded.
So the recommendation has been moved and seconded. Recognize microphone 2.
My question was for a previous item, so I'll step aside for this item here.
Okay, thank you. Behind you is also microphone 2.
Moderator Nagy Said from Oak Ridge Presbyterian. There is an amendment for this recommendation.
Okay, an amendment on recommendation 2. Okay, it's on the screen. Would you go ahead, please?
I just want to ask the clerk of the assembly if this amendment is in order.
That is in order.
Okay. I would like to speak for the amendment. I speak for this amendment for 3 reasons. First, surely the voluntary withdrawal process that allows departing congregations to get 50% of their assets was a great step in the right direction. But it still falls short from doing justice to congregations who have paid 80 or 90% of the cost of their buildings. In December the 3rd of 2023, PCC conducted a service of confession and repentance in which the words of God in Micah 6:8 was repeated few times. He has told you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to do justice and to love kindness. I'm sure that PCC is keen to translate the words of the service of the confession service into solid actions. These overtures take the words of God regarding doing justice seriously. These overtures move with the spirit of the PCC service of confession and repentance and translate its words into concrete practical steps and actions with the departing congregations. Secondly, I also sure that PCC cares about the work of God's kingdom beyond its boundaries, as it cares about it within its boundaries. There are many Presbyterian donors who have wider perspective to the kingdom of God than PCC boundaries. Presbyterian congregations support economical engagement all the time, and that does not seem to go against fiduciary responsibility. Life and Mission Agency support ecumenical ministry. Allowing departing congregations to leave with more of their assets empowers them to continue their ministry to their community more effectively, as it lessens the heavy financial burden of loans and mortgages. In other words, by this, PCC, through its presbyteries, works ecumenically and supports the larger and global ministry of God's kingdom. Thirdly, granting the prayer of these overtures expresses trust in the wisdom and discretion of our presbyteries. It allows presbyteries to study and evaluate every case of departing congregations. Based on that, presbyteries can decide whether not to use or to use and how much to use portion of the assets received from the dissolution of the withdrawing congregation to support the ministry of the new fellowship outside of PCC. Therefore, I speak for this motion.
Thank you very much. Daniel, can I check with this? Your thing is not related to this, or is it?
This one is,
Okay.
yes.
Microphone two.
Thank you, moderator. I am speaking against this amendment to the original motion. It has been a legal precedent in the last number of years.
Would you identify yourself?
Oh, pardon me,
Just
Daniel
because I know
Cho.
you, they might not.
Daniel Cho, Presbyterian of East Toronto. I'm speaking against this motion to amend. For the past number of years, it has been legal precedent in North America, perhaps other jurisdictions as well, that anybody or group that decides to leave a denominational body is not entitled to take any assets with them. That is an established legal precedent in North America. That has been explained in several of the previous General Assemblies. And so as the report has stated very, very effectively, I just want to point out a couple of excerpts. The trustee board has a fiduciary duty and legal responsibility to ensure that the PCC assets are used for the benefit of the PCC. And so some of those monies are committed to mission, supporting new congregations, and so on. So there are a number of reasons, valid reasons, why the policy is as it is stated. The other excerpt I'd like to just briefly read. The implications of leaving the denomination are explained to congregations before they vote to depart, so that all of the congregations, all the parties involved in the consideration of leaving have had these points explained to them carefully. And so I think the church, we have been quite generous in the previous assemblies of granting the 50% and so on. So I will speak against this motion to amend the original recommendation. And I just have a previous item to address also.
Thank you. Microphone one.
Paul Wu from Presbyterian of Ottawa. I hate to be doing this. I know, moderator, you ruled that it's in order for this amendment, but I like to challenge that ruling for the reason that the way the motion read, for the reason outlined above, the reason outlined above by the Assembly Council clearly indicates why that motion should not be granted. By changing the wording from not granted to granted, I believe that ruling creates confusion within the court. I would like to challenge that ruling.
So what if we restated it that the motion to amend would be that the prayer of the overture be granted? I mean, that's in a sense, by overturning this, you're saying 7, 8, and 9 actually be that the prayer of that overture be granted.
Moderator, that doesn't satisfy me. Okay. I think that the speaker from Oak Ridge could outline why he's not for or speaking against an overture, but at this point, to simply flip from not granted to granted, I think it does create a lot of confusion within.
Okay, let me confer with the clerks. Okay, so it is actually, if I'm getting this right from my moderator, moderator's helpers here. It is actually okay in an amendment to say we want to reverse what the original motion was. That is actually okay. It is confusing that for the reasons outlined above remained with it. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to the clerk to say how we untangle ourselves.
We untangle ourselves by never getting into the situation in the first place, but that's beside the point. It is okay, it is acceptable to have a motion to amend that changes the intention of the original motion completely in the obverse. But I think the amendment should have indicated that for the reasons outlined above should have also been deleted, because you cannot have it be granted for the same reasons.
Moderator,
ahead.
point of order.
Go ahead.
The amendment that was sent in did not have that for the reasons outlined above. The amendment that was sent in was that the prayer of the overture numbers 7, 8, and 9, 2024 be granted.
Okay.
That was the amendment.
All right. So let us check. Hold on. We're going to update it. Okay, so as corrected now on the screen, I think this is getting back to where our point of order person was. The motion to amend is that the prayer of overture number 7, 8, 9, 2024 be granted. And
Moderator,
Yes?
I withdraw my challenge.
Thank you. Okay, microphone 4, we saw first.
Thank you, moderator. David Sturtevant, Presbytery of Newfoundland. I speak in favor of the amendment. I think of the words of Jesus Christ when he tells us if someone sues you and asks to take your tunic, give to them your cloak also. I would rather be in a church that preferences the relationships that we have with other worshiping congregations than holding on to money. I think that a lot of our congregations can understand the grind of financial struggle, and I would rather see money going to congregations rather than remaining in the hands of groups like presbyteries, especially where this this motion would only be giving the power to presbyteries to dispense their own portion, the presbytery's portion of the funds, to those congregations as they leave. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Microphone 2.
Thank you, moderator. Roland DeVries, Presbytery Montreal. In a way, I guess my question is a question of clarification concerning our polity. Is there anything in our polity that prevents a presbytery from providing financial support to a congregation that is not a congregation of the Presbyterian Church in Canada? It seems to me that our presbyteries support all kinds of organizations, and that potentially another congregation would be simply another organization, so that the original motion to deny, which is only permission giving, could actually prevent presbyteries from doing what is normally within their power to do. So it's a question.
Thank you. As a polity question, I'm handing this off to the clerk.
Moderator, there are, the answer is a bit complex in that when presbyteries receive funds, they have, and the Commission on Assets, which consists of the convener of the trustee board, the CFO, and myself as the principal clerk, we have received mission plans from presbyteries that tell us what the presbytery's intention to use the 60% of the funds that they will receive will be directed towards. And some of those mission plans do include ministries that are community-based, that are things such as, for example, helping organizations that feed the hungry, that house the homeless, that work with things around health, overall community health. And those are specifically, they're not specifically Presbyterian Church in Canada ministries, but they are related to ministries that are being supported by either the presbytery or the congregations within that presbytery. And we have certainly said yes to mission plans that have included those types of ministries. Where we've not said yes to, and because of the guidelines in the church's policy for the amalgamation or dissolution of congregations, which clearly state that funds should not be designated for other denominations, right? And so we've not had the case where a mission plan has said that we would like to use the proceeds from the closure of whatever Presbyterian church to support the ministry of XXX denominations congregation. That hasn't come before us. And I think if that were the case, the Commission on Assets might have a different response than to support an air ambulance ministry, to support a community support ministry. So the policy for the amalgamation and dissolution of congregations states that, and also part of that is that the trust, and as Daniel said earlier, the trustee board has a fiduciary and legal responsibility that to ensure that the PCC assets are used for the benefit of the PCC. These overtures are asking a very specific question, that funds from the dissolution of a congregation which is seeking voluntary withdrawal from the denomination then be received by the presbytery and then be redirected, some of those funds redirected to the departing fellowship, which is no longer part of the Presbyterian Church in Canada. This is a discussion which has taken place at the Assembly in previous years, where the Assembly decided that the correct resolution to that should be that the church, which through the trustee board receives the entirety of the revenues from the dissolution of a congregation, would then gift 50% of that to the departing fellowship. That was something that was understood by the General Assembly. It was accepted by the Assembly after a lot of debate and discussion and discernment. And it is the transparent understanding that the Presbyterian Church in Canada has around what happens to congregations that seek voluntary withdrawal. This is not an issue of whether we feel that we should be in fellowship or support, sisters and brothers in Christ, but it is the decision of the Assembly that this is what our policy would be. And the overtures would be then a way of saying, well, we want something different. So that's what's before us. But I think in terms of the answer to your question, that would be my comments.
Thank you. And do we know whether two or what's number one, please? Go ahead.
Harry Curry, Presbytery of the Northwest. First time, I think, we've had a commissioner from the Presbytery of the Northwest speak. I speak against the amendment, and basically just to reiterate that the rules, I think, for around this have been well determined by Assembly. It's been a very clear policy. I think we should stick to those rules. And I was basically going to bring up the point that Victor just talked about, that the presbyteries don't actually make the final decision. The presbyteries make a mission plan, which is then approved. And and Victor just explained that they have a fiduciary responsibility according to those mission plans that come in. And I thought he did a good job of explaining that. So I'm against the amendment.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Adams, Presbytery of Seaway Glengarry. I'm of two minds as to what to say at this microphone, moderator. I came actually thinking I was going to refer it back to the Assembly Council, simply because we now have overtures that have no response, that we're going to say we're going to grant, and that's awkward. But I think it's best just to speak against. And I speak against on this grounds. I began ministry in Saskatchewan in 1989 in a congregation that had gone through church union and as a result of church union, had been on the losing side of the debate and the vote. There was, it remained with the Presbyterian congregation a great obstacle that they could not move forward, that they felt they could not move forward in their ministry, felt very hurt because of the fact that the congregation that they had been a part of had orphaned them way back when and had moved on. For us as Presbyterians, as we look at the process of gracious withdrawal from the denomination by some congregations, what that also means is that there are members of those congregations who will now be without church home, and that we as the Presbyterian Church in Canada need to take some of those resources and minister to them, and attempt to establish new congregations where the things that we believe in can be expounded, where the fellowship of Christ can be offered in our manner. And there it is on those grounds that I would speak against this motion.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Moderator, my name is John Crawford. I'm from Presbytery of New Brunswick. I speak against the motion to amend. I think that in the report, it says, to allow presbyteries to risk their fiduciary and legal responsibilities around the assets entrusted to their care would be irresponsible, and to grant the prayer of the overtures would also be disrespectful of the decision arrived at by the denomination through great care and difficulty. And I think that is true. I think that at some point the denomination has made its decision. It has had a fulsome discussion, and these overtures were, in my opinion anyway, moderator, simply a way to reopen most of a very significant part of the debate. And this time, of course, we knew it was going to be around property and assets. So the people who are departing are getting 50%, which I believe is 100% more than the Anglican Church of Canada or the United Church of Canada. Or I also believe in New Brunswick, the Apostolic Pentecostal Church gave to those who were leaving the denomination. So I speak against it, and I hope that reason will prevail here. This is, I don't think this is proper, and I stand against it.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Moderator Andrew Thompson, Presbyterian of London. I speak against the amendment. As some of the reasons have already been outlined, just want to echo what another commissioner said about still having 50% of the funds enables Presbytery to have seed money to maybe begin a new congregation, Presbyterian church, and some of the churches that are withdrawing are in prominent locations across Canada, and it would be to have some resources to start something new would be good, and for those who are maybe left behind. So for those reasons, I speak against the amendment.
Thank you. Let's see. Microphone 2.
Morning. Thank you, moderator. I'm Sung Ha from Oak Ridges Presbytery. I'm here to speak in favor of the overture. This overture is not asking to change the polity or the rule set, but we are asking, the Presbytery of Oak Ridges is asking to give some freedom to the Presbytery so that we will take all the headache and will discernment. And I'm also in the special committee overseeing the departing congregations. So in the guideline of the voluntary withdrawal. The key word is discerning the mind of Christ. So each congregation have different stories, and we are talking about the priesthood. So I'm the first time commissioner, and the terminologies are a little difficult. So all the beneficiaries of the resources of the church, we think about the national church, but we talk about it, and one person gave an idea. We have a assumption. We are assuming that the individuals giving money to the church is giving to the national church, but the individual level, we are giving our resources and gift offering to the local church. So local churches do all their responsibility by giving Presbyterian sharing and allotment to the presbyteries. So I'm asking to give freedom to the presbyteries. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone 1.
Thank you, moderator. Bill Grace, Pickering Presbytery. As I look at this report, it says near the end, while much has been said about the hardship, financial or otherwise, of the congregations that have chosen the path of voluntary withdrawal, it must also be noted that a clear majority of congregations within the denomination have chosen to remain within the Presbyterian Church in Canada. So I speak for the amendment because I know firsthand that many congregations in their discernment had to consider the financial impact. Anything to lessen it or to make it a lower hurdle, I think this would be perhaps, when we say clear majority have chosen to stay, I don't think it's their heart was in choosing to stay. I think it's a place out of survival and fear and what the future would be otherwise and not going through that pain. So I speak I speak for this amendment.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Moderator Corey Stewart from the Presbytery of Cape Breton. I call for an immediate vote on the amendment.
We need a seconder on that. Roland DeVries. So we are calling for the question on the immediate vote. All those in favor? We may have to. Okay. There's no more discussion. We're just voting. So all those in favor, raise.
So friends, the process now is that because the call for the immediate vote has passed, we are now looking at the motion to amend, okay? So the amendment is before us right now, which is that the prayer of overture 789 be granted. That's the amendment. That's the question. There's no more discussion. We have to go to a vote. If you support the amendment, you vote yes. If you don't support the amendment, you vote no, okay? No more discussion.
And we are asking, the YARs have asked for an advisory vote. So YARs, I'm looking to you on the amendment. All those in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you. You have been advised. So the amendment as before you, all those in favor? We're going to count. And all those opposed? It fails. Thank you. So we are now back to the motion as originally written. And I'll wait for that to get up on the screen. The mind, can I ask for the mind of Presbytery? Are you wanting to open debate again, or have we said enough? Would somebody call for an immediate vote then, please? Right? We don't need it? Okay. So I've gotten the mind. I'm going to just rule. I didn't know I had that kind of power, but I do.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah, I may be absolutely corrupt by the end of this. Okay. So on the recommendation 002, moved and seconded. All those in favor? All those opposed? That carries. Thank you. So I think we are ready to move on.
I
with
believe the
report.
next recommendation that was pulled out of consent was number 4?
Number three.
Pardon me? Sessions be urged to have session minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want to speak?
No. So the recommendation was pulled out that sessions be urged to have session minutes, church registers, marriages, baptism, deaths, burials, digitized or microfilmed through the archives to ensure a preservation copy is created for these vital records.
Okay, so the moderator has a question. For those of you who are techie, there's now cloud storage. Has the committee considered cloud storage as a secure place to put records? And that's just an honest question. An archivist. Okay, it will be discussed for the future. Okay, thank you. Microphone 2.
Moderator, I'm Gary Marnock from Lindsay Presbytery, and I wanted to add a minor amendment to this, that when the digitation is complete, the original material be preserved. And the reason for that is that digitization and microfilming is not permanent preservation. It depends on the operating system surviving. Early operating systems are not around and can't be accessed. Microfilming and other forms of copying are subject to inattentive copying, leading to damaged records. And if the originals have been destroyed, one cannot verify what the original content was. So the intention of the recommendation is permanent preservation. It will not be achieved if the original documents are allowed to be destroyed for purposes of space.
Okay, thank you. We have if you would like to make an amendment, you actually would need to make that as an amendment, please. So that's using the jot form on the thing, or just, right.
They haven't?
Do you have the amendment? Okay, so we're going to show that with the amendment. And we need to know if there is a seconder. You have a seconder here? Okay. So the amended motion. All right. So the motion to amend is before you. Speakers to this motion to amend, microphone 2.
Alicia Monson from Northern Saskatchewan Presbytery. I would like to speak to this motion. However, I would like to note that a lot of archives, when done properly, they shouldn't be copied more than once if they're in a digitized state. You can usually copy from the digitized item, so it should only need to be documented at least once. Once it's in the database, then it can be accessible. I know this because I am in fact an archivist, so I have the experience and knowledge to advise on this matter.
Okay, thank you. Microphone 4.
Karen Robbins from Presbytery of Calgary-McLeod. I've been looking into this in terms of our session. I'm in Lethbridge, and I've found that there's no place in Alberta that would do the microfilming, and with the digitizing, they would have to take apart the original document. And so for the session records or the other church congregational records from St. Andrew's Lethbridge, this doesn't seem to be a very viable option. The only option that has been presented is to send the originals to the Presbyterian archives and ask them to do it. But then you send the originals, and you wonder whether they're going to come back in one piece or not. So I'm not sure that this is actually viable for maybe other congregations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask our archivist for advice here. You want to come up to the microphone? Archivists generally don't like talking. They become archivists for a reason, but she's now on the on the spot.
Hi, my name is Nicole D'Angela. I'm the assistant archivist at the Presbyterian Church Archives. I just wanted to say a couple things. Firstly, we do not destroy originals after they've been digitized or microfilmed. Originals are the key piece to preserve, and then we see the digitized or microfilm copy as the backup, and that supports the preservation. Secondly, we would not want any digitization work to be done where the original is taken apart to digitize. If you are able to find the correct vendor, they will have the equipment to digitize safely without having to destruct the original. These are different types of scanners, not a flatbed, but perhaps an overhead, and they would take the correct image without having to destroy the original. So that is, or harm the original. So that is what we would encourage. Otherwise, you would have to, we do offer a service with our trusted vendor, and you would send your records to Toronto, and they would certainly be sent back to you, originals as well as a USB with the digitized copies on it for you to have both the originals and the digitized copy, and we will preserve the digital files ourselves and keep them up to date.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Hello, moderator. Jeff Brown, Presbyterian of Halifax, Lunenburg. I think one thing that's concerning people here, and I am speaking in favor of the motion, is the entire process may be confusing for some sessions, and perhaps some guidance and explanation be distributed from the archive so that people are completely confident in what is really happening, because we are moving into a new age in some of this, and it can be confusing for some.
Okay. And since our assistant archivist is sitting right here, I'm sure she's being advised by this discussion.
Thank you.
See if we can get through this. Are we ready to vote on the motion to amend? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Now we have the motion as amended. Microphone 4.
Janet Taylor, Presbyterian of the Northwest. I just want to bring to everybody's attention that on the tables at the back, there is an information sheet on digitization and microfilm prices, and including a description of what happens with those records. So if you have concerns or questions about this, there is information immediately available at your fingertips.
Thank you very much, Janet. Okay, we now have the motion as amended. All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we're going to break. We have a stated hour at 11 o'clock. We'll invite you back for the rest later on. It's almost 11, and Mary Fontaine, lucky her, is going to be up for giving a report on her year. Microphone. Microphone. Thank you. If you will give your attention now to Mary, that wasn't really a break. You can go. Don't say that. You're overruling the moderator. So, but please, let's give our attention now to Mary.
Hello, it's me again. I just, I've been asked to finish the story about the dances, but first I'm going to give you a little overview about where I've been and what I've done, and give a little feedback and a thank you to all the churches that welcomed me. I felt very loved and very well cared for throughout my time over the year. I apologize to those churches who invited me and I couldn't be there. We did the best we could. In January, though, I was sick and I couldn't make it. So to those people like Niagara, I regret that I wasn't able to make it. To the people that made, for example, the Vancouver Island Presbytery decided to meet me by Zoom. So thank you for doing that. Also wanted to mention that I visited 3 Indigenous groups. One was the Huu-ay-aht First Nation in Vancouver Island, the Chapaway First Nation in Treaty 4, Saskatchewan and Southern Saskatchewan, and then also visited Winnipeg for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, the landfill issue with 4 other women leaders of the Protestant churches. These were all very important meetings, important gatherings, especially the missing and murdered Indigenous women, but also the Huu-ay-aht First Nation, who were doing a ceremony, a coming of age ceremony for the young girls. And I look at it as a way of healing, considering what's happened at the landfill and what's happening to so many Indigenous women who go missing and murdered and some never found, that we're reclaiming the place of women in our societies. Our society, the women were once very important among our people. They had a high place in our societies, an important place. Honored as the gift givers, as the life givers of life. And they were very, this is important part of healing. I also apologized for the 2 residential schools, one at Port Alberni Residential School when I was at the Huu-ay-aht First Nation. As very good response to that. One of the leaders gave me his cedar hat and a feather, which is a very honorable thing, very important expression of thanks. He thought that it was a very important thing to do, that the person of the highest position in the Presbyterian Church would come and personally apologize for what happened to their people. But also at Chapaway First Nation, where there was the women or elders and youth gathering, where the youth was, I think it was very significant because the youth said, one of the youth said, we're stopping this right now. All the pain and like first they shared just heartbreaking stories about what happened in their own families with abuse and all that stuff and alcoholism and all that stuff. But then now I understand now where my dad was coming from. I understood finally. And he said, let me start by saying I love my dad. And then went into that. And so there's this great healing going on. And, this generational trauma is going to stop here with us. So we need you to pray for that, to pray for those that are trying hard to stop the trauma from continuing, for this kind of healing to happen in our communities. And also for the Huu-ay-aht First Nation, if you could pray for their work that they're doing with their women, and they're doing many other things for their healing as well. And for the missing and murdered Indigenous women, I just want to thank the church for the work that you have done in that. But I also ask you to keep on praying that no more of our girls will be lost. One of my cousins was lost. We never did find her. She was at a bingo game with her mom, went out to have a cigarette, and they've never seen her. it's a terrible, terrible thing to lose someone like that. So anyway, the other places I've been to, one of the things I asked for people to do was, can you put me in touch with Indigenous people in your area so that, you know, I have this, I'm hoping that I can meet people in Eastern Canada, because I've been interviewing elders, trying to bring back some of the culture, it's all part of the healing, part of the reconciliation, so that our elders' voices can be heard. Too many are dying too young. And so I'm trying to get some of those stories there and help our youth, help our young people to know who they are, for the elders to be able to leave their legacy behind. But also we're interviewing it as part of a documentary that we're working on. So asking the churches that I've been visiting, is it possible to introduce me to some of the people in your area? And some people were able to do that. I was very pleased that in Montreal that they had connections with First Nations people in their area. And I met about 12 elders there who said, yes, I will share with you when it's time. But others in Ontario, where I got most of my invitations, I'm happy to say, I think it was always Ontario presbyteries who were calling me 3 years in a row to say, will you let your name stand? And finally, the third year, I said, okay, do this one more time. And so I'm very honored by that. But then you guys got a lot of work to do, as I mentioned last night, because reaching out to the First Nations who live in your area, just being you, being caring the way you were cared for me and looked after me. Be a friend, be an advocate, be the church. And I wish you, I'll be praying for you all, and not just Ontario, all across Canada. Of course it happens. It's not just Ontario. But I just noticed it here, and that because it's a large area with a lot of First Nations living here. So I'm grateful for the work that you are doing, but those things need to be taken care of as you are able. And I know that you have good hearts to do that. So I'm grateful for all the churches I attended, and just to mention a few, the church at St. Mary's, Armour Heights, St. Andrew's, Newmarket, Knox Oakville, St. Andrews and Owen Sound. The WMS had a great event just recently. We had a lot of fun there. And then there's also all the meetings I attended with the church, Assembly Council, LMA, and the PWS&D. That was very interesting because I never attended one of their meetings before. I learned a lot. I didn't know what it was all about, but now I have a much better idea what's going on in that department. Our international trip was to Cuba. We were originally going to be going to Israel, Palestine, but that didn't work out because a few days before we were supposed to leave for Israel, Palestine, the war broke out. So in a way, we were very pleased because we don't know what might have happened if we were there already. But yeah, there was also other places that I was invited, like Calgary and Edmonton. I want to say sorry I couldn't be there. I'm hoping I can still drop in and see some of you in your churches there in the summertime. I think that covers most of the places that I've been. Now, Montreal, and the colleges, Presbyterian College, Knox College, and St. Andrew's Hall. Thank you for your hospitality. I think that's, in Ottawa for the Residential School Monument site. That was in June of last year. I think that if I've missed anybody, I'm really sorry. I didn't mean to, but this is mostly the places where I've been to, and I've learned a lot. It's been a growing experience. It's been very stressful, the travel mostly, traveling so often, and then sometimes staying one night and then moving to the next place. Those kinds of things can be stressful, but I'm very pleased. In the end, I spent a lot more time in prayer than previous years. So I think I grew spiritually as well, and thanks to you, thanks to the church for that experience. And now, do I have time to finish my story about the dances? Okay. Yeah. Last night I talked about the traditional dance, the men's dance, and the traditional women's dance, the fancy dress dance of the women, for the women, which is a transformation dance, a butterfly dance, in other words. And the other one was the horse dance, the fancy dance, men's category dance. But there's also something called a jingle dress dance. You'll see these people who are dressed up with little jingles on their dresses. And people will go up to them, people that know about the dances will go and say, can you pray for so-and-so? Someone is sick or someone is needing prayer. So the story was that a man whose daughter was ill asked for a prayer dance. And I don't know how it came about, but he ended up making these little jingles on the dress in those days. I don't know if some of you are old enough to know that they used to have these snuff boxes, and at the top was a metal top on the snuff boxes, and so he apparently, created a little jingle out of that and attached these to the dresses, so that the idea that every time there's a jingle, it's a prayer, and that some of them had 375 jingles on their dresses, very heavy. But anyway, that was part of that. That was what is the jingle dress dance. Of course, now they're all manufactured and they're all very pretty and nice, and they don't dance with that much weight. But the others, and so that's one of the prayer dances. The other prayer dance is the grass dance, the men's grass dance, and it's when you start the powwow dance, and especially if you didn't have lawnmowers in those days, you would have these dancers that go out and press down on the grass, and they'd be the first ones blessing the ground for the other dancers to come. And so they're a prayer dance. They're blessing the ground for the other dancers. The other one, which is kind of humorous and in a way, but also sacred, is something that I learned when I was the student minister at Miss Tawasis. I got a call once from, I think, Gordon Haynes, and he said, can you host some international visitors coming to Canada? So, okay, all right, we can try that. So I went around to the people in my community and asked the guys, okay, well, you guys go hunting and fishing and, get some traditional food, and we're going to have a great big feast out by the lake and cook food and feed our visitors, our international visitors. So they said, okay, and they got really excited about it, and they started dropping off fish and moose, and I said, no, you got to get your wife to cook it. I can't cook that stuff. Anyway, so they did, and we were out at the, we had a great big feast. But anyway, before that, I wanted to go hunting too. So I said to my uncle, Uncle, can you take me hunting? He said, well, we'll see. And a couple days later, he goes, okay, we're going to take you to the dance hall. And I said, dance hall? He said, yep, you'll see. He said, you gotta be up at 4 o'clock in the morning. So we go out at 4 o'clock in the morning, out to the field. And I said, okay, what's a dance hall? He said, well, these prairie chickens, they make little mounds, they clear an area. And around in the bush, in those little weeds, tall weeds, are all the females. He said, and they're watching these dancers. And so anyway, we're driving up. Don't slam the door on the truck. You got to go quietly. But we had also picked up my nephew, and he brought his friend. His friend, we call him White Man because he lives with us, and he's we adopted him as a brother. But the guy, Cree humor, they just call him White Man. So then he's come, but for some reason these guys brought their guns, and Uncle didn't tell them anything. We don't need guns, but they brought their guns, and so we're going along, and you get closer to the field where the chickens are, and at the top of the tree he said, he's the caller. This is the dance hall, And that tree up there, that bird is the caller, like in a square dance. They have a caller. So, okay. So we're going up. And all of a sudden, the white man, he goes, "Look at that stupid bird. He deserves to die." And his uncle, "No, no, no, no." Bang. He killed the caller. And he said, Uncle said, "That bird is a sacred bird. This bird gives up its life for the chickens. If a bird is stuck, if a bird can't get away, he will stay there and he will die before he'll keep on calling. He won't quit calling until everyone is safe." But that was an experience. White man learned a lesson that day, but he felt badly. So that's a chicken dance. But now also the funny part is a while later, after the international visitors came, we're on our way because we have these medical vans that take us back and forth to the cities to see the doctors and whatever. And one day there was something wrong with my car, so I decided to go with a medical van. And the medical van was the chief's wife. So I said, "Oh, Janet, what are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, I have to go. I have to look after them." Okay. And we're talking. I said, "So how did you meet Daryl?" She goes, "Oh, the chicken dance." So anyway, you understand, of course, because they're in the women are the ones that pick their mates. So by the way they dance. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the story of the days of the dances. So not everyone will know those stories. Not everyone who goes to powwow knows. So you know something more than some of them might, if you remember what those dances are about. So I just thank you for listening. And I also want to just say an honor song. If someone says it's an honor song that we believe has been given to us by God for whatever reason. Sometimes it's because of our gifts that are recognized. My honor song was given to me by a Greek woman in a Cree class in Alberta, University of Alberta. And it gives thanks for the gifts of prayer, the gifts of song, and the gifts of dance. And then kind of prophetically, I eventually got into a ministry where we do the arts, cultural arts. We teach singing to the children, dancing, we do drama, and we have these festivals. So sometimes it's very important if someone talks about a honor song that they've been given. It's very special to them. So just a word about that. Does that take up my time? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we do want to say just another word of thanks to Mary. It's been a learning experience, I think, for all of us. Again, I've worked with Mary for years, have learned a lot. And now to have her having been able to share that with the church at large, I think is very special. So we're very, very glad that you got elected moderator. Thank you so much. So we're back to Sherry. We're up to recommendation 4.
Gotta find it. Give me a sec. Thank you.
It's on the screen.
Yeah. I think this probably refers to some of the other conversations that we were having with the previous recommendation. Perhaps the mover who wanted it pulled out, the commissioner wanted it pulled out, want to address it. There she is.
That's microphone 4. Go ahead.
Laura Payne, Presbyterian of Oak Ridges. I would like to propose an amendment, and I did send it in, and simply to not specify external hard drive or USB.
Let us get it up on the screen, an amendment to number 4.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Just in recognition that we do live in a more digital age, and my background is in information security, and I'm happy if folks want to come and talk to me about challenges or questions they may have related to that for their congregations. But external hard drives and USBs are options. They are not impervious. They are not by default secure, and cloud is not by default secure, but it can be secure. So that was the reason for just de-specifying the motion, and then the standards can be the location where the living recommendations stay.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Yes, Heather Vase is
Okay,
seconded on
thank
that.
you. So the amended motion is before you? No. The amendment, yeah, the emotion, sorry, the motion to amend is before you. Is there any discussion? Can I ask? Archive person, does this work for you? That's okay, all right, thank you. The archive person, oh, well, the archivist, otherwise no. Any discussion? Okay, let's call for the vote then. All those in favor of this motion to amend? Any opposed? That is carried, so now we have the amended motion. We're going to get that on the screen. Okay. 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 Except that you're missing a period after external location, which, stop teaching. Thank you. All right. The amended motion, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We move on to number 5. No? 5 was on consent, okay. On to 6.
Before, if you would indulge me just 1 second before we move on, you'll notice after the recommendations, there's information on the Benevolence Committee. And I would encourage all ministers and church workers and others to make sure that you are taking a look at this information on the website. There is funding available for folks who are in need. And I would really encourage you, knowing that it would be absolutely confidential, that if there is need to please reach out to the national office, to the principal clerk, and see if there's funding that you can use for one time or ongoing. Please do make sure that you are taking advantage of this. Sometimes I think that this goes unnoticed. And then we are on to recommendation number 6. I will read the recommendation, then I'll offer a couple of comments. The recommendation is that Don Muir's intention to retire as Associate Secretary in the General Assembly Office and as Deputy Clerk of the Assembly effective the end of September 2025 be accepted with thanks. Don, you have been around for what, 53 years? Something like that? Yeah. We will miss you, and we know that you have been a gift to this denomination. I'm sure we will have more conversation as this comes up, but just know that you have been so appreciated. And so the recommendation is before you.
He's not done yet. Don is such an attention hog. He craves these moments. Of course, he's not retiring until September of next year. So this is not his final General Assembly. So we'll have him for another year. What the motion does, if it passes, is that we are able then to move on with the steps that we need to engage in as the Assembly Council to look at the job description, circulate the position description, create a search committee, and then find the next deputy clerk for the General Assembly. So that's all it does. I know that there'll be occasion next year at the General Assembly to be able to honor Don in an appropriate fashion. This just gets us rolling on that.
Okay, Microphone, I can't see the number, microphone 1.
Harry Curry, Presbyterian of the Northwest. And this, just as a question, I think is worth putting out there because we vote on retirements. Can we actually stop people from retiring? And I think I'm the logical one to anyway talk to Don because I think I am the clerk who's presented Don with the most interesting situations over the years, and we've laughed and cried together over some of the things that we've had to deal with.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're ready to vote on this. And as Victor says, we'll have a chance for celebrating Don a year from now, which would be highly appropriate, as well as if you know people out there who love the polity of the church, start thinking about it because he's invaluable for knowing the details. So you might think of people you know who might be good for that job. So as moved and seconded, all those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Okay, thank you.
Now you can do your happy dance. We are on to recommendation number 7, that the 2025 budget be adopted. Please note that it is in here, all of the financial statements, as I said, came out to you earlier. We are going to have it moved and seconded. We can have some discussion, but we will not be taking the final vote on this until later on, in case over the course of assembly that there is some things that come up that we decide that we really need to give Peter, Paul, and Mary $300,000. We need to put that into the budget. So we will have discussion around this, but not the vote at this time.
Okay. So discussion on number 7. I see microphone 3.
Peter, my name is Peter.
Hold on, just a second.
Of course.
Okay, we're going to have James come up and talk to this a bit, so we'll work with more information. James, you're being called up. There you are. So you should probably introduce yourself because I know you as James.
By way of introduction, I am James Waddle. I am the interim Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer of the Presbyterian Church in Canada. This time last year, my predecessor, Oliver Eng, retired, and as of July 1, 2023, I took the position. I certainly can identify with Pablo's job description, and I think for being the CFO and the treasurer, there's a certain aspect of being a historian in there as well, and an anthropologist, as we dig back through the written and the unwritten to prepare the 2023 financial statements, and then the forward-looking piece for the 2025 budget for the operating fund of the PCC. I also don't think it's much of a stretch to take Mary's frequent references to trees last night to the financial aspects of the church and the planting of seeds that grow over time. And we'll touch on that as we work through the budget presentation as to the generosity of the past and how it translates into restricted funds that become available for future programs. The opportunity is mine to talk to the financial status and the structure of the finances within the organization. The motion addresses the 2025 operating budget, but there is a broader financial position that is more complex. Beginning with the 2025 budget, the principles under which it was developed was the management team and the finance committee recommended to Assembly Council that it should avoid reductions in programs of the church, since we have sufficient financial resources in the medium term to continue support, and if anything, demand and needs for programs and funds within the church is on the rise. The revenues for investments, it was pointed out to Assembly Council, rebounded in 2023, and we enjoyed something like a 12% return on the CP fund in 2023, and that largely filled the gap left in 2022 from losses recorded in that year. And we felt there was enough investment income to cover the difference between the revenues and expenses through having fund transfers. So the 2025 budget is roughly 900,000 higher than the budget for 2024 and 23, but part of that includes Pablo's new position, the Office of Intercultural Liaison, a 5-year term. There's two halves to the financial picture. There's the operating fund and the restricted funds. And we're most familiar with the operating fund, and that is the day-to-day spendings and the day-to-day operations, and that expense is roughly around 9 million. The revenues generated don't cover all of that, and we effect a funds transfer from restricted funds. And the feeling is that we have a significant amount of internally restricted funds that can be transferred and cover our costs over the 2025 budget and out into the future. And so the current total value of restricted funds is somewhere in the range of 45 million of the total 126. The project of the earnings on the CP fund are modest, and we'd hope to exceed that. So with that in mind, the budget has increased for the LMA and the General Assembly Office and the support services by about 3%, and the other part making up the 11% is the new position of the intercultural liaison. The operating fund does fund the operation, and it also is the arms and legs for the disbursement of restricted funds. And that's something to be kept in mind, since there's a significant amount of our programs that are paid from the restricted funds. And as an example, we currently disperse about 100,000 for bursaries for students studying for ministry at the theological colleges. And then there's significant amounts dedicated to supporting ministers and others in situations of financial need. And funds for benevolence also come from restricted funds. But the arms and legs, the organization of the payments of these is from the cost within the operating fund. Many of you know when a congregation is dissolved, the trustee board usually moves to sell the property, and when that is complete, 60% of the resulting revenue is made available to the presbytery of the closed congregation on the approval of a mission plan. Another 10% of the revenue is directed to the National Indigenous Ministries Council and its ministry, and the remaining 30% is directed to the New and Renewing Ministries Fund, which is a restricted fund of the PCC. The terms of reference for that fund include the support of presbyteries in the establishment of new congregations and renewing congregations. The report that was included as part of the Assembly Council report talks to the availability of particular funds, the Life and Mission, the New and Renewing Ministry Fund, Dissolved Congregations, and the Presbyterian Sharing Legacy Fund. And at December 31st, 2023, these three funds had a combined balance of $29.9 million. And these are invested in the CP and are available for making funds transfers to cover off the deficit for the budget that's being presented for 2025. So in summary, the financial story is the combination of the current generosity through Presbyterian sharing from congregations and from individuals and from other bequests that are very generously given to the national church and to the denomination. And it's also the generosity of the past and the use of restricted funds that people have through previous generations given to the organization for use and for deployment. And I think it's a combination, and that goes back to that reference to the way we took the budget for 2025 to Assembly Council. It was with the full knowledge that we were spending more than the current year, the 2025 projected revenues, but it was in that balance of the gifts from the past and combination of that we felt that was more important than cutting back on the programs specifically for 2025. So rather than seeing a problem in the deficit, we see it as something that it's a wise and faithful decision to look to the combination of these and to combine the work that we're doing to revision the approach of the organization and to tie the financial resources to that repurposing and revisioning as well. So the budget as presented is on your sheet as a part of the Assembly Council presentation, and I would welcome questions now.
Yep, it's been moved, so this is the time we're going to do questions.
Questions
indeed.
now.
So
Very
now
good.
we're going to be back to microphone 3. I saw you first.
Moderator, just a quick question. I'm Peter Bush from the Presbyterian of Waterloo, Wellington, but just a quick question. So are we doing only questions now or statements about the budget?
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, we're just not going to vote on it. We have to leave it open.
Well, I understand that. Thank you, moderator. So as I said, my name is Peter Bush. I'm from the Presbyterian of Waterloo, Wellington, and I live on the contested land of the Haldeman Tract. I speak against adopting this budget. In 2023, the operating budget of the Presbyterian Church in Canada ran a $1.7 million shortfall. That's 21.5% of the budget. There were 21 cents of every dollar we spent came from savings. In 2024, the estimate is that the shortfall will be 2.65 million, which is 1/3 of the budget, or 33 cents of every dollar will come out of savings. If a congregation were in such a position, there'd be serious conversations about how to manage going forward. The budget before us today is that we're being asked to vote in favor of a budget that projects a deficit of almost 3.5 million, a figure that's twice as large as the deficit of 2 years ago in 2023. And that represents 39.1% of the budget. So essentially 40 cents of every dollar spent in the operating budget is coming out of savings. No congregation that I have served would have agreed to such a budget unless there were clear signs about how things might change in the future. And as the report says, there is no meaningful, the Assembly Council is saying there's no meaningful possibility of giving us a meaningful answer about what the 2026 or 2027 projections might even look like. Yes, we have reserve funds, but as we use reserve funds for current purposes, what those restricted funds are used for becomes less and less possible to fund.
I can't support this budget.
Thank you. Microphone 3.
Yes, moderator, Bob Sim from the Presbytery of Hamilton. My concerns are similar to the previous speaker. I would vote against this budget, not so much to hobble the church, but to recognize that there are some difficult trends that are happening. One of them is actually as Reverend Bush has said, we have an increasing amount of going into savings. And although I have heard the treasurer talk to us about we have sufficient of these savings, not every aspect of the Presbyterian Church has that ability. And the congregation that I represent had to pass a $70,000 deficit this year. And the presbytery is supporting us with a loan against the sale of our building if we have to close. The presbytery does not see us as being viable the way we are at this moment. And I would question that if the current people in the Presbyterian Church can't support the current operations, then we may not be viable as a denomination. And I would ask that through you, moderator, that the Assembly Council actually do a viability study on whether we are viable, even though we have all this cash on hand. It sounds great having $50 million, but if we keep on going in this trend of increasing from 21% to 33% to 39%, and maybe next year 45 or 50%, that money's not going to last very long. The other two trends that I noticed was, first of all, in 2022, we had income of $165,000 from buildings being closed and sold. In 2023, it was 3.5 million. And we don't know what that's going to be in 2024 or in 2025, because we know I know in our presbytery, our clerk has said that out of the 28 congregations, there's 24 of them that are questioning what is happening. And I'm sure that that's happening across the country. The other one is that our cash on hand, in 2022, we had 4.6 million to begin the year. In 2023, we had 2.4 million, a drop of $2.173 million in cash on hand. If we had not sold those buildings and had that cash, we would have ended up with a deficit of $1.3 million and no money to operate the church. So the trend there is showing that we're increasingly using the sale of buildings in order to fund our operations. And so I don't want to hobble the church by saying cancel the budget, but I think we have to look at these trends and say we're in trouble. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Microphone 4.
Good morning. My name is Wendy McWilliams, and I am from the Presbytery of New Brunswick, and I'm also the convener of special committee handling 2 requests to voluntarily depart the denomination over remits B and C. And in the 2022 procedures for voluntary withdrawal, it says that a congregation is responsible for the fees of those professionals engaged in connection with the session's recommendation for voluntary withdrawal, including an auditor and, if required, an appraiser and others. My questions are this: what happens if legal or auditing services are sought and the congregation is unwilling or unable to pay? Who is responsible for that? And does the budget allow or include provisions to support the presbyteries when such due diligence is required?
So just conferring with the principal clerk here, obviously that's an important concern. It's not actually relevant to the budget discussion at this point. And the advice would be, do reach out to the national offices and see how they can help you, but it's not relevant to exactly what we're talking about here. So important, but out of order?
Madam Moderator, it's not clear in the budget if that is a line item. So ultimately, my question is there a line item within the budget that's presented in the report?
Right, there's not a line item about that.
Thank you.
Microphone 2 was next.
Thank you, Moderator. Maureen Walter, Presbytery of East Toronto. I speak in favor of the budget. I think that if we have concerns about viability, our best efforts are to continue our ministry to the best of our ability. And it sounds like the budget has some hopeful notes. And if we end up spending money on ministry, that's what we're here to do, is provide ministry to the world. I think it's, in my opinion, the right decision, and hopefully it would lead to improvement. And if it doesn't, then we've given it our best shot. So I speak in favor of the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, microphone 2. Remember, we're not voting on this now, but the discussion is good. Microphone 3.
My name is Robert Ferrier. I'm from the Hamilton Presbytery. And just note as to sort of qualifications to talk on this. I did spend almost 40 years as a chartered accountant and CPA. And prior to that, I was a farmer, so I appreciate the comments on seeds. Your seeds have to be planted in good soil. And you need to be preparing that soil. You need to be planting new seeds. What I see in this budget is that we're building new barns. We're building a overhead. And if you expect an organization to continue, if I was making recommendations in a business, I would be recommending in this situation that you put money into the front line, that you put money into sales. In our case, that sales is mission and the mission of the congregations in the field. They're declining. We've heard from several people here that things are declining everywhere. We're selling buildings already to maintain our mission. It's time to take a really hard look. I heard somebody here talking about viability. I see we have $29 million to blow here, but is this denomination viable beyond 5 years? And I really think that should be addressed. And I would really think that this budget should be reduced. And I think there should be a direction to put the money out front rather than in the back office. Thank you.
Thank you, microphone 3. Microphone 4, we have next.
Good afternoon, Madam Moderator. I greet you with the grace and peace of Jesus Christ from the Presbytery of Barrie. My name is Tom Mason. I was quite shocked by the statement from Reverend Bush. For every dollar that we bring in, it's costing us 40 cents to take that $1. We're being asked to vote on a budget. a budget that will have serious repercussions. And I just wanted to suggest, would it be possible for the Assembly to look at a detailed cash and asset management plan for the next 5 to 10 years that show the impact of running a negative budget where 40 cents of every dollar goes just as a negative? I mention this with a caring heart. The Church of Scotland has undergone a very similar situation. The Church of Scotland waited until they were in a position of extreme weakness and difficulty. They acted when they had to act, when they had no other solutions. And I would just like to encourage the General Assembly today to look at this in a more proactive way, to figure out where are we and where are we going to be in the next 5 to 10 years. Because I would find it very difficult to vote for a budget today when I would not know the implications of that budget over the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you.
Okay,
Peace
thank
be
you.
with you.
Okay, we are rapidly approaching time that we're ending this Sederunt, so we're going to have one more, and then if you're at a microphone, we are recording. So when we end for now, remember which microphone you're at, and we will remember where you were. So the next one was number 1.
Patrick Ujju, Presbytery of Brampton. I think the real question that we need to start with is the congregation or the denomination viable in the next 5 years? It sounds like something that's like, ooh, that's big, but it is the big question. And when we start looking at the big questions, then we can answer the small ones. And this budget, believe it or not, is a small question. It's saying, what are we going to do next year? The problem is that we don't know how this fits in to the years that follow. Is this a good idea next year? Or is this going to get, as we've heard, worse year after year after year after year? The question was, what is our plan? And we're in a place, I believe, where we actually don't have a plan. Many people in this room will say the denomination needs to restructure, except we don't know what that restructuring looks like right now. We know that our numbers are decreasing exponentially, 37% decrease, and we expect another 37 to 50% decrease in numbers of members over the next 10 years. Look at ourselves. Look at the color of our hair. Where will the increased revenues come from? Bequests, but that's only limited. So I appreciate, James, that, again, interim. And there's been a lot that's been laid right on that, and I expect this as well. I don't know what medium term means. Is it 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Do we have a 10-year plan? What are the assumptions on which the plan are based? Do we have an assumption for the what's going to happen in the United States for the next elections when it comes in the fall this year? How is that going to affect the markets? Are we going to be in another situation where there's a $20 million loss? These things I don't know, and they're not part of this plan, and I don't think we're probably able to, given the context of your work. But these are things that we need to know if we're actually going to agree to budgets that have implications for us. I know in business that if we're looking, our revenues are this and our expenses are this, then there are decisions we have to make as to what we are not going to do. These are hard choices, because these are choices about saying, there are missions which we will not engage in. But if we don't make those, then we won't be engaged in potentially any mission at all. So these are difficult choices, and these are choices that we'll have to make.
Thank you. So remember what microphone you were at? Okay. And we're going to call end the debate for the moment and look to Terry Lee for some announcements.
Thank you, moderator. Would Laura Murray see me after this Sederunt? We've been able to arrange a chair, so if you can see me at the front, that will be wonderful. Just some items now that we are here at the Athletic Center and where some of the sites are. The washrooms on this level are actually through the locker rooms that are on this level. The men's are at this side, the women's are on that side. And up the stairs, you can either go up the stairs by the assembly office, or there are stairs down at this end. There are washrooms up above there as well, and there is an accessible washroom. For those of you who require assistance with the elevator, there's a local person from the area who will operate the elevator for us. As many of you discovered, refreshments are at the back of the room. They will come down to us about 10 o'clock in the morning and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Also at the back, many of you have already noticed that there are the displays. The displays are of the standing committees of the General Assembly, and that is an option for you to get to know the work of our church and the work of the various standing committees. Many of the resources, at least from the national office, we didn't bring an awful lot of them, but if you are interested in ordering any resources or finding out more about those resources, you can speak to any of the staff members, or over to my right, there are 4 people sitting at the communications table. You can speak to Kelly and the staff there if you require any information. But I do encourage you to look at the displays and talk to the various staff, whether here within the church office or the colleges or McLean Estate or the others which are represented here. The assembly office is upstairs, and if you look over to your left, up by the OUA sign, there's a lighted room. That is the office, and if you require anything that relates to the assembly, Catherine Muir and Marjorie Copeland will be able to assist you. A reminder that if you do have any expenses, to please get that in by this evening at supper time. Another comment in terms of washrooms, as you know, our accommodation is where we get to share a washroom with our neighbor. We have already had one case where one of the neighbors did not unlock the door for the other. So please, when you are finished in the washroom after you've had your shower, make sure that the door is unlocked. If you have a problem, go to the front desk. So that will be something that hopefully we won't need to make again. Now to the more important things about the assembly itself. As you know from last night's business committee, there are various committees that were appointed at this assembly. When the conveners, you are ready to either call your committee together, please let me know and we will arrange a meeting space. And for those of you who are on those committees, at a time such as this, I will say that the committee, for example, on remits needs to meet, and I will just point around the room and get the group to meet. That way, then you will see each other and we'll be able to make arrangements for whenever you wish to meet. Also, presbyteries sometimes would like to gather commissioners together, and within your presbytery, if anyone wants to call presbyters together, please let me know that as well. So in terms of one of the committees, will the committee to examine records meet over by the charge station today? Let me rephrase that. You are to meet in the Hawks Lounge at 1:30. And the place to do that is to go up to the assembly office and they will get you to the Hawks Lounge. So again, the committee to examine records at 1:30. I would also like to introduce, and I'm looking over to Kelly to see if Carolyn is here. Hi, Carolyn. Welcome to the assembly. Carolyn is a videographer and she's going to be interviewing some people today, tomorrow, and Wednesday in order for us to tell the story about who we are. Also, as I mentioned, if you are interested to talk about resources or to order resources, you can go over and speak with Kelly or Lindsay at the communication table. That's it for now.
Would you please rise? The assembly is adjourned to meet here again in the gym of the Athletic and Recreation Center this afternoon, Monday, June 3rd at 2 o'clock. Let us pray. Lord Jesus Christ, you are the beginning and end of all of our journeys, for we live our lives in you. We know not where the journey of your church in these days will lead, but you do not leave us unguided. Thank you for those whose lives, by word, deed, and example, have become signposts for us. We pray your love and blessing on these, our friends, co-workers, and neighbors. We pray in thanks for Mary Fontaine and her past year as moderator. And as she asked, we pray for the intention of Indigenous youth that generational trauma would stop now. As well as we pray for the Dirksen family and the loss of John, be with them in this time of grief. From what we have always assumed to where you need us to be, Jesus, lead on. From the security of what we know to the adventure of what you will reveal, Jesus, lead on. To refashion the fabric of this world until it resembles the shape of your kingdom, Jesus, lead on. Because you are always with us and grace our lives with your love, Jesus, lead on. Amen.
Right. One of the recommendations for bills and overtures is about those